at the 52nd Annual WBC Convention here at the Mirage Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Discussions, seminars on things such as officiating, in particular refereeing. Vic Drakulich talks about the activities. So much of this is about the fighters coming together, but also about officiating and improving upon that, judging, refereeing. And joining us, Vic Drakulich, one of the top referees in the game. Welcome, good to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Explain to the fans what goes on here at this convention in terms of, in particular, refereeing and what you guys are trying to do to improve your game.
What we try to do during the course of this convention is we try to, as best possible, get together with our fellow officials and try to exchange information which basically would up our game. You never have a total full handle on whatever we do. And if you ever get to that point, you are missing something, because there's always going to be something that can surprise you. And that's one of the things that we brought up in the referee seminar yesterday. Surprises that I hope I never have to see in my lifetime, but we have to prepare for just in case. And so again, we come together, we exchange information, we tell our experiences, and hopefully help each and every one of us out in terms of constant improvement in terms of refereeing professional boxing matches.
You brought out something, though, too, that just happened in a fight you just did with Thurman and Bundu that was different. You may never see it again, you might, but you had two fighters and the constant switching of Bundu from Southpaw to Orthodox, and explain how all that as a referee, it made it a little difficult for you at times.
Well, it wasn't so much difficult, it was more interesting.
Different.
Yeah. What we try to achieve as referees is to maintain a position where we can pretty much see everything that's going on in that fight. And one of the basic principles is that if you have one fighter who's an Orthodox fighter with, let's say, the left hand up at the front versus a Southpaw with the right hand forward, there is an open side to those fighters. And you try to maintain your position on that open side. I was trying to do that during the course of that fight, and then I would notice that even though at one point I would have an open side, it was immediately closed off. It dawned on me that both fighters were changing positions with one another, and very technical, and trying to show a different front to try to somehow gain an advantage. And as a result, it made me constantly adjust to try to keep to the open side as they changed their stance. And I actually appreciated it, because it was a kind of a technical approach to the game, and these guys were doing what they're trained to do. The problem I had in that is the people watching, the fans out there, started booing them if there was not enough of an exchange of punches. And I could not for the life of me understand why they were booing these two fighters, because if you're really a student of the game, you would know that they were very technical in their approach, and they might not have been exchanging a lot at certain points. They were employing
positioning
yeah. That I thought was impressive myself.
What other things came out of the seminar with the referees yesterday that might be of interest to the fans, or in particular to you? I guess maybe hearing other stories from other referees and what have you.
Well, I shared with the group my experience in a fight that occurred some time ago. Brandon Rios versus Diego Chavez. As I explained to the group, it's probably one of the most difficult fights I've had in my career. I tried to control the fight by virtue of issuing warnings and then immediately issuing point deductions, but it didn't seem to be working. And we get into I took points away from both, and we get into the 8th round, and towards the end of that round, Brandon Rios had his head down, and Chavez had his arm around his head, to where I really couldn't see what was going on other than the fact the bell rang, and so I went to break him up. When I did, Brandon Rios got up and said, you no good, dirty, blah, 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 and was complaining. So I sent them both to their respective corners. Then I went to Brandon Rios' corner and said, what is your problem? And he said, when my head was down, he was under there, he was taking his hand and glove and raking across my face and then poking my eyes with the thumb. I couldn't see that, and I can't call what I can't see. It's very similar to a fight that Kenny Bayless had, where there's a biting of the hand of
Yeah.
Mayweather, and he couldn't see it, so he couldn't call
Maidana,
it. You know,
yeah.
tried to hold it down. I thought it was rather interesting that both Maidana and this Chavez are from Argentina, but I don't know. In any event, I then told, when Brandon Rios told me what the problem was, I said, calm down, I'll handle it. I went over to the other corner, Chavez's corner, and I told him, I can't call what I can't see, so you're getting away with this one. You do something very similar to that again, and this fight's over. Disqualification, do you understand me? And he nodded. So we start the next round, and it gets to the end of the 9th round, and he's, again, Brandon Rios with his head down, what have you, went into a lock with Chavez, who had his arm around, and then he pulled out, and I knew something was going on, but he pulled out and again said, you no good, dirty, and at that point, I stepped in and called a halt to the fight. I disqualified Chavez. The people that have watched, it's funny, there's a range of emotions on it. Some people say the best call they've ever seen, and others say you no good, dirty SOB, because of the fact that I stopped the fight. But I felt that that was the right thing to do at that time, and I'd do it again if I had to.
You know, you mentioned, and I'm old school, but I'm also understanding of technology and what they're able to do now on at least high profile, because I know it costs money, but at least on major television or pay-per-view cards, may or may not affect you, but it could. What about instant replay? They can do it like for a knockdown that maybe were a situation where a guy got knocked out, it looked like a knockdown, but maybe there was an arm that threw the guy. Would you mind that?
I wouldn't mind it one bit. Mm-hmm. The only problem that you'll have in employing the use of video is a delay in the action.
Yeah.
That's what they're concerned with. And how you can employ it without delaying the action, I'm going to leave it to the people that know photography, and because it's way beyond our ability to,
but I think
as referees. But leave it up to them. If they can do it, they can review any of our calls and maintain the fluidity of the fight. I'm all for it.
Yeah, because even with the raking thing, you know, that would have been something that somebody could have, for example, with the commissioners, could have gone back and seen, and then they could have relayed to you, and he was right, that is happening, and maybe it could help you with your job, that something, you know.
Well, and I'll tell you, there's a very good friend of mine, referee here in Las Vegas, Russell Mora, who was watching it with Joe Cortez at Joe Cortez's house. Well, they applauded me when I did the disqualification. They were in full agreement. Russell later got a copy of that fight, and he said if you go through a certain program, you can do extreme slow-mo and watch it. And he says if you will watch the hand of Chavez when that occurred, you can see him moving it under there, you know, and it's very slight. Sometimes I have to go on a gut feeling as to what I see, a guy's reaction, and I could tell Brandon Rios was not faking it. I mean, he was very angry. In fact, after I stopped the fight, he wanted to fight the entire corner. He was so angry, I had to send him and push him over to his own corner and say, stop. So a guy that reacts like that is not kidding. He knows that he had been fouled and fouled repeatedly, and that's why I believe the call that I made was the right call, even though there are certain people in the press have expressed their feelings that it wasn't the right call.
Does that bother you?
Yes, sometimes it does when I think it's unfair. I don't mind being criticized if it's a close call and they say, well, we don't agree with it, or with it, you know. But the way that some of the people in the press handle it today, it's so demeaning and so
mean-spirited.
Mean-spirited is a good term, that it really gets you angry.
Yeah. Do you ever go back and watch, like, you know, I watch old-time fighters, I watch old-time broadcasters, even grew up with the likes and Howard Cosell and following Colonel Bob Sheridan and guys I like, you know, in the business. Do you ever go back and watch old referees, tapes or anything like that?
I will on occasion.
Have any favorites?
I learn from the best. I learned from Mills Lane. He was in Reno. He was DA. I was a defense attorney.
Yeah.
And
keep it in the family.
Exactly. You know, Mills was an excellent referee, and there's things that Mills did that I emulated.
Yeah.
There's things that he did that I have discarded. If you'll remember, one of the techniques that they used back then was when the fighters would grab onto each other, they'd grab a glove and pull it away.
Yeah.
I did that a couple times, emulating Mills, and one of the members of the WBC took me aside and said, do you really want to do that? I said, why not? And they explained it to me. By grabbing that glove, you take 50% of a person's defense away, and if a guy, once you release it, the opponent comes and hits him with a hook, he goes down. whose fault is that?
Right.
And I said, that's a very good point. So if you'll know modernly, you very seldom see the slapping of the gloves or the grabbing of the gloves. You either break them or you let them continue with the infighting. So,
how important are these seminars for referees?
I think they're essential. And one of the things that I brought to the attention of the people that attended was the fact that I had the opportunity of spending an afternoon with other officials in my room to discuss how we were going to approach the seminar and the topics we were going to bring up. And by virtue of just sitting down and talking with guys in close quarters like that, we came up with some really valuable information. We could discuss differences in our techniques. I personally, when I go to break the fighters, I will give a very, very loud command to break, but at the same time be right there and use my hands and have them apart. Not with the front of my hands, it's too much pressure. It's with the back of my hands, and then I step back out. The reason I do that, and I like being close, is because it minimizes the chance of one of the boxers throwing a punch on the break. Another referee that was in there, he doesn't like to take that approach. He likes to be away and break and let them break themselves. I don't think either one is wrong. I think it's just a preference. My preference is to be there just for safety reasons. But it's good to discuss that and go back and forth to discuss. Maybe I come to the conclusion that their approach that they're communicating is even better than mine. Give you an example. Kenny Howard brought up, Kenny Howard, no friend of mine, Kenny Bayless had mentioned when I told him that very valuable tool that I use when a person goes down, knocked down, after I complete the count, I will look at them, I'll ask them how they're doing, and I'll have them walk to me. I will watch their legs, I'll find, are they stable, are they capable of understanding? The other night I had to call a fight because I walked him. He's still trying to stuff his mouthpiece back in and isn't listening to me, which indicates that he's not all there, and I stopped the fight. His corner was very happy about it, but it's a tool that I use. Kenny Bayless went one step further, and he said what he likes to employ is when he has them walk to him, then he'll turn sideways and have them kind of follow him. So there's not just a straight line, but a little bit of it really gives you additional information. I said, that's a great point. I might use that the next time. So those are the things we discuss, we exchange ideas, and it's all for the good of perfecting our
craft.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of final things, I'll just let you speak to them, that I think are really important for referees is not to go in there with any preconceived notion of either fighter, who they are, what they are, how they fight. If they, maybe if some guys had a history of being dirty, that's important. But and also, like great fighters say to me all the time, like Ray Leonard loves to say to me, staying focused in the eye of the storm, the focus that you have to maintain during a pitched 12-round battle. Speak to those two things.
Yeah. I agree. Don't go in with preconceived notions. One of the things that happens during the course of giving instructions to fighters in the dressing room is you'll oftentimes have members of the corner say, well, watch this guy for this. He does this. He's dirty this. In fact, it happened the other night because Diego Chavez was fighting Bradley. And Bradley's corner apparently was saying, this guy's dirty here, he's dirty here. And they said, and what you have to say is, look, I will watch the fight. I will make the decisions at that time. I'm not going in with any preconceived notions. I'll just call it the way I see it. So, have solace in that. And that would have worked perfectly there because apparently, from what I've understood in discussing with a number of people here, is that Diego Chavez had not engaged in the same type of conduct that he did in the fight with Brandon Rios. And I don't know if it was because of my disqualifying him in that previous fight. I don't know. I hope it is because it kind of hopefully communicated to him we don't put up with that here in the state of Nevada. May not have. Maybe that was just an off night for him. I don't know. But bottom line is I agree with you. When we go into that ring, we try to not have preconceived notions. We might want to know a little bit about the fighter, just in terms of how they fight. Do they like to infight, et cetera, just kind of have more of a feel. But
and staying
give them
focused?
And keep a kind of a clean slate for both boxers.
Mm-hmm. And staying focused, how difficult is that? I mean, because you're under a lot of pressure there. You could have all kinds of things going on. For you, how do you maintain your composure?
Focusing, saying, look, I'm here to do a job, and I'm going to do the best job I possibly can. And I hope my call is the right call. It may not be. It might be upon review, saying, I don't agree with that. Like, to give you an example, in the Chavez fight, I would take a different tact than I did. Instead of just going to his corner and giving him instructions saying, you pull that again, looking at it now, I would now, when the bell rang, starting the 9th round, I'd call time. I'd send Rios over to the neutral corner. I'd call him out with an interpreter and make it known to everybody, you pulled this, I'm not going to stand for it, you do it again, and this fight's over. You're going to get disqualified. And so everybody knows. Things that I kind of thought about over the last couple of months as to, but I would make a change that way. Just not that it would have made a change in the outcome, but it would have just probably sold the call that much better. Yeah. But those are things that I work on. And like I said, when I get in that ring before, I totally concentrate. I'm constantly thinking, okay, I go through possible scenarios in my mind, how to handle it. One thing I look at, I make sure I know where all the judges are. So in my mind, if it goes down, I know this is a neutral corner, that's a neutral corner. The doctor is over here, the timekeeper is over here. So you don't look like you're out of sorts when you're in the middle of the ring. It's just total focus and doing the best job you can based upon your experience.
Yeah, and I'm sure boxing fans appreciate that type of an attitude and that type of a candor about always wanting to do your best, because at the end of the day, we can all improve, and it's all about the safety and well-being for the fighters, and also the integrity, preserving that integrity of this great sport of boxing. Happy holidays. Great to see you again.
Thank you very much. Been a pleasure.